Ryan moved into a new house in a quiet suburban neighborhood, he was full of hope for a fresh start and new acquaintances. However, from the very first day, his attention was drawn to Mr. Smith, the neighbor next door. Mr. Smith was the kind of person about whom legends were told, the neighbor whom no one ever saw. He was always there, but he never stepped out onto the street during the day, always preferring to stay hidden away in his secluded spaces. The first few weeks in the new house passed quietly for Ryan, but with each passing day, his curiosity about Mr. Smith only grew. He noticed how in the evening, when it got dark, the shadows behind Mr. Smith's house would slowly move, evoking strange feelings in him. Sometimes he saw the door of Smith's house open, and something mysterious would emerge onto the street, but he could never make out anything in the darkness. All of this only intensified his desire to learn more about his mysterious neighbor. One night, in the middle of the night, when everyone was asleep, Ryan heard strange noises coming from Mr. Smith's house. It was a quiet but distinct whisper that seemed to be coming from the darkness. He initially thought it was his imagination playing tricks on him, but the sounds continued, growing louder and more distinct. Ryan decided that something was wrong in the neighbor's house and decided to call the police. A police car arrived a few minutes after he called, and Ryan led them to Mr. Smith's house. The police searched the house but found no signs of intrusion or crime. They asked Ryan about his report, and he told them about the strange noises he had heard. But where he expected to see Mr. Smith in the house, there was no one. The police began their investigation, but all they found were traces of Mr. Smith's life, but no evidence of any real crime. Days went by, and Mr. Smith still did not appear. Ryan felt increasingly uneasy about his mysterious neighbor. Every time he passed by the house, he felt the ghost of his presence, which only made him more worried. But what scared him even more was the fact that the real Mr. Smith had been dead for several days already. His body was found in the house when the police responded to Ryan's call. This fact left Ryan at a loss. Who then lived in Mr. Smith's house, and where did he disappear to? Ryan decided to explore Mr. Smith's house to find any clues that might give him a hint of what was going on. He sneaked into the house through the back door, which was broken. The house was eerily quiet, and at first he thought there was no one there. But as he began to search the rooms, he heard a faint whisper from the depths of the house. His heart skipped a beat with fear. Ryan moved forward, following the sound, which grew louder and clearer as he approached the basement stairs. Ryan's heart raced in his chest as he descended into the basement. Before him lay a scene he would never forget. In the basement was a makeshift space, full of various equipment and tools. Near the entrance was a table with many papers and notes. On the walls hung pictures resembling criminal boards with photographs and arrows pointing to various details. Ryan was in awe as he inspected closer and realized they were maps of his neighborhood, with photographs and descriptions of different people. It was like a scene from a horror movie, and Ryan felt that his life was hanging by a thread. He took a notebook from his pocket to remember what he saw, and then heard footsteps behind him. He turned around and saw a dark figure standing in the doorway. It was a man he had never seen before. He stared at Ryan with cold, hard eyes, and Ryan realized that he shouldn't be there. He turned and ran, screaming, until he burst out of the house and saw the headlights of a police car flashing on the street. He ran towards them without looking back, and when he reached them, he collided with one of the officers, bombarding him with questions about what was happening. They took him with them and returned to Mr. Smith's house, but no one was there anymore. All traces of this strange man had been washed away, and the house was once again as dark and quiet as before. A few days later, articles appeared in the newspapers about the disappearance of a dangerous criminal who was accused of a series of serious crimes. Ryan realized that it was the same man he had seen in Mr. Smith's house. He realized that he had accidentally become a witness to someone trying to evade the law, and that his life could have been in danger if he had stayed a few minutes longer. Since then, Ryan has never seen this man again and has tried to forget about everything that happened, but the shadow of Mr. Smith remains with him. His peace of mind was shattered, and he could never feel confident in his own home again. He knew that the world around him could be dangerous and unexpected, and that sometimes even the quietest streets could hide dark secrets. Kelly always felt that something strange was happening in her new apartment. From the very beginning, when she first stepped foot in this house, she felt a certain heaviness in the air, as if someone was watching her from the shadows. But what scared her the most was the phone call she sometimes heard in the middle of the night. Every time the phone rang, Kelly would wake up in fright, feeling her heart beating in unison with the endless ringing. She would try to grab the phone, but when she picked up the receiver, there was only breathing on the other end, a quiet but persistent whisper that penetrated her consciousness, making her hair stand on end. Kelly tried to reassure herself that it might just be a glitch or a random call from some phone scammer, but with each occurrence of the call, she felt that someone or something was watching her. She felt as though her space was being invaded, as if someone else was in her apartment, observing her every move. She told her friends about it, but they just laughed it off, thinking it was her imagination playing tricks on her. Maybe it's just a glitch in the line, one of her friends said, trying to calm her down. Or maybe you're just reading too many horror stories, and now you're projecting it onto your life, added another, trying to be supportive. But Kelly knew it was more than just a glitch in the line or a figment of her imagination. She felt that there was something unusual, something sinister about this call that wouldn't let her rest. Every time she hung up the phone, she felt her body fill with fear. She felt that something sinister was near her, hiding in the darkness, waiting for its moment. One night, when the call rang again, Kelly decided it was time to investigate. She decided to find out where this mysterious call was coming from and who was behind it. She knew that the phone line passed through the old basement, which was locked and inaccessible to the tenants. But her curiosity overcame her fear, and she decided to take the risk and explore it. As she descended into the basement, she felt the air grow even heavier, as if she had entered another world, where dark forces and impenetrable secrets reigned. She felt her heart beating in unison with the muffled beats of her own footsteps, every step taking her deeper and deeper into the darkness. When she reached the end of the corridor, she found a door at the end of it, which was slightly ajar. Her heart pounded in her chest as she slowly approached it, her breath catching in short, gasping breaths. When she finally dared to look inside, she saw a dark figure standing in front of the old phone, which emitted that mystical sound. She recoiled in horror when she recognized his face. It was her former partner who had long been missing without a trace. He looked at her with a silent expression, as if he knew about her secret fear and was using it against her. Kelly felt the horror engulf her, felt her body shake with strong tremors, felt her legs give way beneath her. She knew she had to act fast if she wanted to get out of here alive. She turned and ran back to the stairs, her eyes filled with tears, her voice stuck in her throat. When she emerged into the light, her hands were shaking, and tears streamed down her cheeks. She knew that her life would never be the same again, and that she could no longer feel safe in her own home. Kelly realized that her life had been disrupted, her world had been shattered, and she could no longer be sure that her home was a place where she could call her sanctuary. She knew that something sinister was there in the darkness, something that was watching her, something that she couldn't explain and that wouldn't let her rest. She understood that the mysteries of this world could be more frightening than she could have imagined, and that now she had to fight to survive in this madness. Jack was a typical office worker who returned home late at night after a long and monotonous day at work. He lived in a small town where even in the late hours, the streets were quiet and almost deserted. For most people in his town, the night meant a time for rest and sleep, but for Jack, it was a time for solitude and reflection. One evening, as Jack left the office, the streets were already quiet. The light from the street lamps was barely noticeable, and only the occasional passing car illuminated his path. He walked along a familiar street, lost in his thoughts about work, family, and the day that had passed. From time to time, he stopped to breathe in the fresh air and enjoy a moment of tranquility that he couldn't find anywhere else. But something was different that evening. Jack felt like someone was watching him. He glanced around but saw no one. His heart began to beat faster, but he decided it was just his imagination. Continuing on, he heard footsteps behind him, rustling in the leaves, and a faint shuffling nearby. He quickened his pace, trying to shake off the intrusive feeling of fear that made him shiver even in the cool night air. As he approached his home, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. The door was slightly ajar. Jack's heart skipped a beat. He approached cautiously and heard a faint whisper from inside. Fear froze him in place, But curiosity overcame his fear, and he decided to step inside to find out what was happening. He cautiously opened the door and entered his home. In the darkness, he could only see a faint light coming from the living room. He heard a noise that seemed familiar but at the same time unfamiliar and frightening. He looked up and saw a figure standing in the shadows. "Who's there?" he whispered, but there was no answer. He approached the figure, clutching the keys to the house in his hand, as if preparing to defend himself. When he was a few steps away, he realized that it was a person. It was someone familiar, but in the darkness, Jack couldn't make out his face. "What are you doing here?" Jack asked, trying to keep calm in his voice. "I'm sorry, I accidentally ended up here," the stranger said apologetically. "I got lost and decided to take shelter from the rain. I'm sorry for the inconvenience." Jack felt a little relieved. He realized that it was just a random passerby seeking shelter from the night rain. But nevertheless, he felt that something was wrong. He decided it would be best to ask the stranger to leave his home. "I'm sorry, but I need you to leave," he said, trying to maintain a calm tone. "This is my home, and I can't allow you to stay here." Of course, the stranger said, stepping back towards the door. "I'm sorry again for the trouble. I'll be on my way." Jack watched as the stranger left his home and disappeared into the darkness. He closed the door behind him and realized that his heart was still beating faster than usual. He felt like something unknown lurked in the shadows of his home, and he couldn't shake the feeling that his home had been violated, if only for a moment. As he locked the door and checked the windows, he couldn't shake the feeling that the stranger's presence had left an unsettling mark on his once safe haven.